What is up, everyone, and welcome back to the Talking Sports Podcast right here on YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. As always, I am your host, Peter DiBiasi, and we have another jam-packed episode for you, jam-packed podcast for you, jam-packed video for you guys. As always, before we get into today's topic, make sure you guys follow us on social media. If you love the NFL, if you love college football, follow us on social media, MLB, NBA, NHL, PGA Tour, all the fun stuff. Make sure you follow us on social media at Talking Sports PD. And as always, this link is in the description. We are sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. Make sure you guys use code TSP for a 100% deposit match up to $100. It is the best time to get on Underdog Fantasy. NFL season and college football season is right around the corner. So do not go anywhere. Get on Underdog Fantasy and make sure you guys do that. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Road to 5K continues. As you guys can tell by the title, we have an absolute jam-packed episode. So if you're listening on podcast or Spotify, I appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, I also appreciate it as well. But we have a jam-packed episode. And the reason I say we have a jam-packed episode, college football 2025 preview, there's a lot to cover. We're going to give you guys our ACC predictions, our Big Ten predictions, our Big 12, and our SEC predictions. I'm going to give you my Heisman pick. I'm going to give you a sleeper and a disappointment in each of those conferences. And then I'm going to give you guys my 12-team playoff. And then I'm going to tell you who I have winning the national championship. I'm not going to give you guys a matchup, but I'm going to have you guys – actually, I'll give you guys a matchup, but I'm going to give you guys my 12-team playoff, who's in it, and who's my national champion. If you guys have not watched any of our NFL content, so please go do that. We have a ton of NFL content. Soon, we're going to be dropping our AFC preview next week. So when you guys are watching this or listening to this next week, our NFL preview, our AFC preview comes out. But if you haven't listened yet, make sure you watch or listen to our NFC preview and then a couple over-unders. I gave you 3 overs and 3 unders, I think, for the NFL season. So a lot of NFL content on all platforms, so do not go anywhere. Let's get started here, guys. You guys have watched a lot of our college football episodes before. We do some playoff previews. We do like first round, quarterfinals, semifinals previews. I try to get a lot of college football stuff in here as best as possible, as best as I can. So this is going to be maybe a little bit of a longer episode, but we're going to get through it together. We're going to start with the ACC. So I'm going to give you, before I give you my conference championship pick, I'm going to give you a sleeper, and then I'm going to give you a disappointment. And then I'm going to give you my conference championship, the 2 teams who are in the conference championship, and then my pick. And then obviously, if you win your conference, or if you win a Power 4 conference, or if you're the number 1 Group of 5 team, you get an automatic bid to the college football playoff. ACC sleeper, and that is the Duke Blue Devils. So right now, and all of these odds are via FanDuel. So I'm going to say it now, but all of these odds, if you want to check them out, via FanDuel. ACC sleeper. Over/under win total right now is 6.5. Fun thing about Duke, last year was Manny Diaz's first year. They had Malik Murphy as their starting quarterback. He is no longer there. He had a great first year, decided to transfer to Oregon State. They bring in Tulane transfer quarterback Darian Mensah. So did they upgrade at quarterback? They might have upgraded at quarterback. They lost some talent to the NFL, but I think they got better at quarterback. Manny Diaz was really good in year 1. I think he has another good year in year 2. They were 9-3 in the regular season last season. So when I tell you guys a lot of these last year records, I'm going to give you the regular season records. If they played in a playoff game, I'll mention the playoff game. I'm not going to give you guys games baked in with their bowl records because we know how bowl games are. It's very hit or miss who plays and who doesn't. And it just takes a lot of research for that. And I'm not going to give you and bore you with that. So they were 9-3 in the regular season last season. So I think their schedule is manageable. I think they're still a solid, underrated, talented team. I think they upgraded at quarterback with Darian Mensah. And why wouldn't I think they go over? I don't say when I say this is a sleeper team, I don't think they're a college football playoff contender. I really don't think they're probably an ACC championship contender. But I think they're an over 6.5 win team. I think they're an 8-9 win team like they were last year. And right now they're plus 2,500 odds to win the ACC, not make the ACC championship game, but win the ACC. Their over-under is 6.5, and they were 9-3 last year. And I think they upgraded a quarterback. My disappointment, sorry, Syracuse, my ACC disappointment. Did I spell disappointment wrong? Nope, I am joking. Took me a second. I'm messing with you. ACC disappointment is Syracuse. Their over-under win total is 5.5. You might be thinking, there is a lot of hype around Syracuse. Why is there over under win total of 5.5? Well, when you lose your best receiver to Penn State, when you lose your quarterback who was prolific for you to the NFL draft, you might take a step back. Their over under win total is 5.5. They were 9-3 last year in the regular season, and they ended up winning their bowl game. But they were 9-3 in the regular season. Their win total is just to get over it is bowl eligibility. And this team won double-digit games last year, including their bowl win. Couple things. They're bringing in Steve Angeli from Notre Dame, who played a little bit in that college football playoff, but he did not win the job at Notre Dame. He transferred. People thought he had a chance to win that job at Notre Dame, but guess what? He transferred out early in spring, which makes me feel like he never had, or he was told he wasn't going to win the job. Obviously, it was Kenny Minchie versus C.J. Carr. They gave it to C.J. Carr. So they get Steve Angeli, who's been announced as the starting quarterback for Syracuse. He's a downgrade from Kyle McCord, but I don't think that's their issue. My issue with Syracuse and why I think they're going to be a disappointing team coming off a great 9-win season in Fran Brown's first year is the fact, look at their schedule. Out of conference, they have a neutral site game against ranked Tennessee. Okay, whatever. Well, then they play these 5 teams in ACC on the road who are all better than them, or one non-ACC team, but then 4 ACC teams. So they play Tennessee out of conference neutral site. Then they play at Clemson, they play at SMU, they play at Georgia Tech, they play at Miami, and they play at Notre Dame. I'm going to repeat that one more time. They neutral site game against Tennessee to kick off the year in Atlanta. Then they also play at Clemson. They play at SMU. They play at Georgia Tech. They play at Miami. And they play at Notre Dame. Those are 6 games that they're all going to be underdogs in. They're all going to be underdogs in those 6 games. I'm not saying they're losing all 6 games, but they're going to be underdogs and pretty big underdogs in a lot of those games in this season. And that doesn't take into account the other 6 games they play this year that are not as hard, but you can lose college football games to teams that are not as talented as you. The disappointment for me is the schedule. It's a brutal schedule. I think, look, I'm not saying take the under on the 5.5. I think you should take the over. It's probably solid value. But I'm saying you go from a team that just won 9 games to a team that's probably going to barely sniff 7, if even, and they probably are going to be sitting at 6, maybe 7 if they're lucky. That's a step back, and that's obviously disappointing. So now you're thinking, who do I have in the ACC Championship game? The 2 teams I have in the ACC Championship game, and I'm going to put it on the screen right now who I have winning. That is Clemson over Miami in the ACC Championship game. Talking about Miami, they bring in Carson Beck. They had one of the most prolific offenses in college football last year, but guess what? Their defense was abysmal. Their secondary was in rough shape. They lose a tough game to Syracuse, to all of the teams who I just talked about, to end the year. The reason they were not in the college football playoff. And now you're thinking, well, what happens in next year with Mario Cristobal? I think Miami actually has a good year. I think they upgraded that defense. I trust their pass catchers enough. And if Carson Beck is healthy, he's not Cam Ward, but he's a talented quarterback that a year ago at this time, people were talking about as the potential number 1 pick in the draft. Like, I think we got a slower roll on the hate for Miami. I think they're in the ACC Championship game, but I don't think this is a shocker to anybody. Clemson. Clemson's the best team. They're a top 5 team in college football. Follow us on social media for later this week. You'll be seeing my first initial top 10 rankings to start the college football season. We post them every week on Instagram and on X. So make sure you guys follow us at Talking Sports PD on social media. You'll see where I have Clemson and maybe potentially Miami to start the year in that top 10. Clemson, Cade Klubnik, they're returning a ton of starters. They lost 3 games last year. They ended up winning the ACC Championship game, going to the playoff, and then obviously losing to Texas in the college football playoff. I think this team is better than they were last year. They added a couple transfer portal, and Cade Klubnik is one of the best, if not the best, quarterback in college football. I like Clemson over Miami in the ACC Championship game. Moving on the list to the Big Ten. Fun conference, obviously. My Big Ten sleeper is the Iowa Hawkeyes. Right now on FanDuel, their over-under is 7.5. They're plus 3,500 to win the Big Ten. They were 8-4 last year in the regular season. They were 8-4 with one of the most abysmal quarterback plays I have seen in recent memory. They started 4 different quarterbacks made appearances for them last year. 4 different quarterbacks made appearances last year for Iowa, and they still somehow won 8 games. Like, this team Kirk Ferentz and that defense and that rushing attack with Caleb Johnson, and I know they have to replace Caleb Johnson, was awesome last year, and they won 8 games. If they had above average quarterback play last year, that team probably wins 9-10 games, and you're talking about battling potential if they got to 10 games for a playoff spot. I think this team is completely being slept on. They added Mark Gronkowski from South Dakota State from the FCS, started a ton of games, a veteran quarterback there. This might be their best quarterback in the last 10 to 15 years, and I'm not joking here. I know we haven't seen him play a snap for Iowa, but what he's bringing from South Dakota State, the winning, the tradition, and the experience to bring to a Kirk Ferentz defense and rushing attack, and I know they're replacing Caleb Johnson, over 7.5 seems like a lock to me, and I think this team is a sleeper. I think this team's a sleeper for the college football playoff. I didn't say Duke was. I said Duke was a sleeper to get over their win total and be a competitive team and a good team. I was a sleeper to over the 7.5 to compete for the Big Ten and have a chance to get into the college football playoff. Brace yourself, Indiana fans, because you're my disappointment heading into 2025. Their over-under is 8.5 according to FanDuel. They have the sixth best odds to win the Big Ten at plus 3,000. You know what Indiana was last year in the regular season? They were 11-1. Their only loss was to the eventual national champions, Ohio State. They lost to Notre Dame in round 1 of the playoffs. So they fizzled out in the round 1 of the playoffs. Not a shocker that they lost at Notre Dame, but shocker that they went 11-1, snuck into the playoffs, and the only loss was to the eventual national champion, Ohio State. Of course, it's going to be a disappointment. It's really hard for whatever they do unless they get to probably 10 wins. 10-2 is not a disappointing year, even though you won 11 games. 9 wins or less is considered a disappointment, in my opinion. And it's not Indiana's fault. It's not anybody's fault. It's just what happens when you go 11-1. And you didn't go 11-1 and you're Georgia or you're Texas or Ohio State where you can backfill talent over and over and over again. It's hard to backfill talent at Indiana. It just is. So, look, I know they lost Curtis Rourke to the NFL. They bring in Mendoza from California. I think that's a really good add. But to think that they're going to get not anywhere near, but to get to double-digit wins this year for me, I just don't see it. They're over-under set 8.5. Their schedule, they have they don't play Ohio State this year, but they have a harder schedule than they did last year. They don't play anybody non-conference, and then I can do a whole podcast about what Curt Cinetti is doing with his non-conference schedule. And I was going to be completely honest, it's embarrassing. Curt Cinetti should be embarrassed for what he does with that non-conference schedule. Neither here or there for that. Their schedule, they have a 3-week stretch at one point of the year where they host Illinois, who people love this year, who's a top 15 to start the year. They go at Iowa, which is one of the toughest places to play in college football, and I just said they're a sleeper for this year. And then they go at Oregon. So they have a 3-week stretch where they play host Illinois, at Iowa, at Oregon. That's a really tough 3 straight games. And then later in the year, they go to Happy Valley and play Penn State in the last couple games of the year. Those 4 games make me think this team doesn't get to double-digit wins this year. They probably go 1-3 in those games, in my opinion. At best, they go 2-2, and then they would have to not lose to anybody else, and they would be 10-2, and then that's not a disappointing year. Those 4 games, that 3-week stretch at one point of the year with Illinois, at Iowa, and at Oregon kind of makes me feel like they take a step back. I think it's more of the fact that what they did last year is going to be really hard to replicate this year. I really don't think it's going to happen again. They don't have the backfill talent like some of these top-tier teams do. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe Indiana emerges into the scene and could be a contender for each year. And maybe Curt Cinetti built a really good program. I'm not downing Curt Cinetti. He wins. He said it himself. But I think it's going to be a really up and down year for Indiana, and they probably sit around more than 7-8 win total, in my opinion. Now for the Big Ten championship. Obviously, 2 teams. It's not going to be it's going to be one team from last year, and it's not the Oregon Ducks. It's Penn State over Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. So last year it was Oregon over Penn State. This year it's Penn State over Ohio State. Quickly on Ohio State, they make the playoff. I think I'm not going to spoil it. Ohio State's going to get in the playoff. They have too much talent. You have the best receiver in the country in Jeremiah Smith. They just won the national championship. I know they're replacing a lot, but like I said earlier, when you have a powerhouse like Ohio State and Georgia and Alabama, you expect them to backfill. They're starting Julian Sain, former 5-star that originally committed to Alabama, now at Ohio State. He won the job. They host Texas week 1. noon game, which is going to be one of the crazier games of the whole season, the whole 14-week season we got of college football. I think 14-week regular season. I think this is going to be a good Ohio State team, but I think this is Penn State's year. Not to win the national championship, or maybe it is their year to win the national championship. We'll find out. But I think Penn State's here to win the Big Ten and beat some good teams. Funniest thing ever, they lose to Ohio State in the regular season, in my opinion, and they beat Ohio, but they redeem themselves and beat Ohio State in the national championship, because I think they go 11-1 in the regular season, and their only loss beat Ohio State. I do think they beat Oregon at home. I do have Oregon taking a step back this year. Drew Auer, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen. They brought in 3 transfer receivers, one from Syracuse, Kyron Hudson, Pena. I think this team is talented on the outside for the first time in like 5 years, it feels like. Drew Auer's a Heisman candidate, a chance to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. This is the year. I think Penn State's too talented. They're too good. They're too experienced. And that loss to Notre Dame in the semifinals is going to motivate them all year. Penn State wins the Big Ten over Ohio State. Take a second here. My we broke down 2 conferences. I have Clemson beating Miami in the ACC championship game, and then I have Penn State beating Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. Big 12 on deck, then the SEC, Heisman, and then our playoff. I need like an ad right here to like take like a deep breath. Maybe I'll get Underdog to send me like an ad so I can run halfway through these shows when I do a longer one by myself, because it gets tiring. I'm starting to. It's a little hot in here, and I talk for a while. Okay. The craziest conference in all of college football. The conference that no one knows what's going to happen, and I think any of these teams could win it. So take everything when I talk about the Big 12 with a grain of salt, because I have no idea what happens in this conference. Arizona State was predicted to be one of the worst teams in the conference last year. They won the Big 12. They won the Big 12, got a bye. Thank goodness we changed that format, and took Texas to the wire in the quarterfinals. So who the heck knows? First, my sleeper. That is Mike Gundy and the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Oklahoma State last year was 3-9. One of the worst years we've seen in recent memory under Mike Gundy. Mike Gundy's stability and winning 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 games is like when does Mike Gundy win less than 8 games? Well, he did last year. He went 3-9. So Oklahoma State's over-under right now is 4.5. Their projected odds to win the Big 12 is plus 5,500. Funny enough, most teams at the bottom of that conference are not really plus 5,500 to win their conference. It's just how crazy the Big 12 is. If you saw me like just almost choke on my saliva, that was fun and probably a little gross. They're second to worst odds to win the Big 12 in this college football season. I don't have a great explanation for why I think Oklahoma State's a sleeper. I said Iowa's a sleeper for the college football playoff. I said Duke's a sleeper to be a competitive 8-9 win team. Oklahoma State's a sleeper to win 6 to 7, maybe 8 games. Their over-under is 4.5. I think they're a crazy sleeper here. And I'm going off the Mike Gundy stability thing and the Mike Gundy every other year. And you might be like, what is the Mike Gundy every other year? Well, let's do the Mike Gundy every other year. 2021, 12-2. This baked into bowl games and all that fun stuff. Conference championship records, all that kind of stuff. 2021, 12-2. Thumbs up. 2022. 2021, 12-2. 2022, 7-6. 2023, 10-4. Oh, we're good again. 2024, 3-9. Bad. 2025, 7-8 wins for Oklahoma State. They get back to closer to I don't think they get to 2021 level or 2023 level. I think they're somewhere in the 2022 level, 7 to 8 wins. My disappointment in the Big 12 is the TCU Horned Frogs. Over under at 6.5. So they're not like 8.5, 9-win projected teams, but I think they're disappointment. When I looked at this and when I was doing my research today for the Big 12, it took me like half an hour to figure out who's disappointing me and who surprised me in the Big 12, because I have no idea what is happening in that conference. That conference is nuts. It is crazy. It is awesome. It's the best conference in college football. It's not the most talented or going to produce national champions, but it's the most competitive, and it is exactly what college football is supposed to be. The Big 12 is exactly what college football is supposed to be. But yeah, TCU is my disappointment. They have the 6th best odds to win the Big 12. That means absolutely nothing. They were 8-4 in the regular season last year. They were a good, actually underrated team last year that no one really talked about, but they were 8-4 in the regular season last year. Josh Hoover is their quarterback. He's a solid quarterback, about 25 plus touchdowns last year. Their schedule concerns me. Not a lot of Big 12 teams' schedule kind of concerns me, and they didn't have a crazy schedule last year. One of the reasons they got to 8-4. They're out of conference schedule. They play at UNC and Bill Belichick. I don't know, and they're favored in that game. TCU is favored in that game. I don't know what to expect from UNC. I know UNC doesn't have a hard schedule, so people predicted them to win more games than maybe people thought they would, but that's probably more based off their schedule than the actual talent on the field. But that's a tough week 1 game on a Monday night at North Carolina. No one knows what to expect with Bill Belichick there. But then they also play another ACC team that's starting in the top 20, and that is SMU. SMU went to the playoff last year. They have Kevin Jennings. Maybe we see SMU in the playoff again this year. Maybe we don't. But they have Kevin Jennings again this year. SMU is a good team. So they're out of conference schedules at UNC versus SMU. Let's say they split. That's a loss already. And then I pinpointed 5 conference games where like this is a tough stretch. They play at Arizona State. They play at Kansas State. They host Baylor. They host Iowa State. And they play at BYU, which is a really tough place to play. So you factor that in with an at UNC with a hosting SMU non-conference. And then you factor in, I think, a pretty tough 5 games in the Big 12 with Arizona State, Kansas State, Baylor, Iowa State, and BYU. Those are 7 games right there. And I just think it might be a little bit disappointing year for TCU. I think they're probably hitting around the 5 to 6 win kind of mark. Now, Peter, what is your Big 12 championship? Guess what? I'll give you a pick in a second here. The Big 12 is getting 1 team in the college football playoff. I wish they could get 2, wish they could get 3. It'd be a lot more fun, but it's just what it is and what the Big 12 is at the moment. Maybe they shock me and they get 2 teams in it, and I would love that. But I think their only chance is probably their winner of their conference, like last year with Arizona State. I have a team getting revenge from last year, and that is Iowa State beating Baylor in the Big 12 championship. We all remember last year with Arizona State beating Iowa State to go to win the Big 12 and then obviously eventually go to the college football playoff. Rocco Becht, they already beat Iowa State in week 0, already beat Kansas State. Both teams are ranked. Rocco Becht is one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12, one of the better quarterbacks in college football. I like Iowa State last year. This year, I love Matt. I love them last year. I love them again this year. I love Matt Campbell. He's one of the best, most underrated coaches in college football. And then you look at Baylor. Dave Aranda saved his job last year. That thing was a sinking ship about halfway through the year. And they had a surge in the last 4 or 5 games to be a really good team. And I think Sawyer Robertson is a really good quarterback for Baylor. I like Baylor a lot this year. But you could pencil in any team. You can pencil in TCU, even I said they were a disappointment. You could pencil in Kansas State, Arizona State, Iowa State, Baylor. Like I said, Utah. You can never doubt Utah. Throw in BYU. Throw in like Oklahoma State, maybe West Virginia surprises people. I have no idea maybe Houston surprises people. UCF. You could just start naming the whole conference, and you could be like, well, they could win. They could win the conference. They could be in the title game. But I have Iowa State over Baylor. I think Iowa State gets it done this year. I think they're the best team in the Big 12. I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea what is going on in that conference, and I love it. I absolutely love what the Big 10 produces week in and week out in college football. The final conference we are breaking down is the SEC, and our first is the sleeper. That is the Missouri Tigers. Right now, via FanDuel, Missouri is over/under win total is at 6.5. They have the 5th worst odds to win the SEC. Look, the SEC is a gauntlet. I think the SEC is the best conference in college football. I know the Big 10 won their last 2. What's it called? They won their last 2 national championships. But I love what the SEC, and the SEC is the best conference. Sorry, I lost my train. I thought I was looking at something. They were 9-3, so they're over under 6.5. 5th worst odds to win the SEC. They're over under win total of 6.5. They were 9-3 in the regular season last year with not a hard schedule. Guess what? They do that again. They have a transfer quarterback coming in from Penn State. I know they had to replace Brady Cook. I like where Eli Drinkowitz. Sorry, geez, brain fart there. I like what Eli Drinkowitz is building at Missouri. I think they're a really talented team. Look, Were they overrated last year? Yeah, they were overrated last year. The 9-3 was basically baked into their schedule. But guess what? They have a similar schedule again, and they're over under 6.5. I don't know if they get into the playoff conversation like they did last year. They might sneak into the back half of that playoff conversation and give some teams a scare, or have to win a game or two down the stretch to maybe be in the college football playoff. I don't think they can do enough. I don't think they're good enough to make the college football playoff. I don't. But I think they're good enough to be over 6.5 and win 8-9 games again. And it's a talent thing. I think they're a good team. I like what Eli Drinkowitz is building at Missouri. They were 9-3 last year, fifth worst odds in the SEC. Like, give me a break. And guess what? Their schedule is not that hard for an SEC schedule. They play Kansas at a conference. I didn't even mention the Kansas in the Big 12. Sorry, Kansas fans. Big 12. Kansas, good team. Obviously, Jalen Daniels, if he's healthy, that team is good. Tough game, but Kansas, Missouri, that's a great rivalry right there. They should be playing that all the time, as they do. Teams they don't play in the SEC. So we talk about teams we talk about Florida, we talk about Oklahoma, tough schedules. South Carolina, tough schedule. Wisconsin in the Big Ten has a tough schedule. We talk about teams with really tough schedules. We always don't talk about teams with not that hard schedules compared to the other teams in the SEC, which why I think they could go over the 6.5. These are the teams that Missouri does not play in conference. They don't play Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Texas, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. Those 6 teams are 6 of the 8 best teams in that conference. And they don't play any of them. No Georgia, no Bama, no LSU, no Texas. My opinion, the 4 best teams in conference. And then anywhere from 5 to 9, in my opinion, is Ole Miss and Tennessee. They don't play those 2 teams either. Those 6 teams, they do not play. 6 of the 8, 9 best teams in the conference, they do not play. That factors into me why I think this team is over 6.5, a sleeper. Maybe they are a sleeper for a college football playoff. I'll put them in with the Iowa category for a sleeper for the college football playoff. They're not in the Duke, obviously, Oklahoma State category. They're better than those teams. Missouri and Iowa are in the sleeper for college football playoff spot. My disappointment is, once again, and this might be the end of the Hugh Freeze era, is the Auburn Tigers. Their over-under is 7.5. They have the 8th best odds to win the SEC. That is better than Missouri, which is mind-boggling to me, and they're plus 2,000 to win the SEC. They were 5-7 last year. This is a massive year for Hugh Freeze. Auburn is a big-time program that has championship aspirations because they won a championship with Cam Newton, and they played in another championship right around that era. This team has championship aspirations. They expect to compete with Georgia and Alabama and Texas and LSU every single year, and they haven't. And they have not done that over the last 5 to 6 years, outside of a handful of a couple games. Hugh Freeze needs to win this year. He needs to win big. He needs to get to 8 wins. Their over-unders is 7.5. He needs to hit that over. Clearly, I don't think if he goes 7-5, I don't know if that's good enough for him to keep his job. It might just be good enough, but he needs to get over that 7.5 win total. They were 5-7 last year. They're bringing Jackson Arnold from Oklahoma, and Auburn plays Oklahoma really early in September, or they play them in September. We remember Jackson Arnold last year. High 5-star, was supposed to take over Oklahoma, be their next great quarterback, Brent Venables. That was an absolute disaster. And I'm not blaming just Jackson Arnold. I'm blaming the OC at Oklahoma, who's no longer there. I'm blaming Brent Venables. I'm blaming Oklahoma. I'm blaming the receivers. I'm blaming Jackson Arnold as well. I'm blaming everything. It was a disaster from the top to bottom. It was a malfunction. It was a disaster from top to bottom in that program. He gets a fresh start, and he comes to Auburn. I don't know what I've heard from camp, and what I've read and what I've seen is not great. He's been inconsistent. It's been a little bit up and down. Hugh Freeze hasn't named a starter yet. They're talking about playing 1 or 2 quarterbacks in their opening game against Baylor, who I just said who I predicted to be in the Big 12 championship game. This is a tough scenario for Jackson Arnold and Hugh Freeze. I don't know if they can get over that 7.5 win total. And I just talked about Missouri having an easy SEC schedule, easier than some other SEC teams. Their schedule is tough for Auburn. So like I just said, they play at Baylor out of conference. And I just put Baylor in the Big 12 championship. So Baylor is a good team. They play at Baylor out of conference. There are other 5 big-time games in the SEC. At Oklahoma, at Texas A&M, home against Georgia, home against Missouri, and Alabama. So Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Georgia, Missouri, and Alabama in conference, and then along with at Baylor. That's a tough stretch. They're not, in my opinion, those 6 teams, they're not better than. Maybe they're more talented than Baylor. I'm not going to say Baylor is not. Auburn is more talented than Baylor. That's not a debate. Doesn't mean they're going to beat them. They are not more talented than Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Georgia. They're on par with Missouri, and they're not more talented than Alabama. Those are a tough 6 games for Auburn. I don't know what they get, and they need productive quarterback play. This could blow up in my face. If they get productive quarterback play, then they're going to be an 8-9 win, 10-win team because they're that talented. So, yeah, they're definitely way more talented than Baylor. The problem is, can they get consistent quarterback play? Can they get rid of their turnover issue that they had last year? If they cannot do either of those 2 things, it's going to be the same thing over and over again, no matter how talented Auburn is, and they're talented. Okay, who's in the SEC championship game and who's winning the SEC? Last year, it was Georgia over Texas. Guess who's repeating in the SEC? And that is the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia over Alabama in the SEC championship game. First off, Alabama. Kalen DeBoer has had a lot of heat around him this year. I know he only won 9 games last year. I know they missed the playoff in the first year of the 12-team playoff, and that's not acceptable. And it's not. It is not acceptable at Alabama to ever, no matter who's coaching, who's quarterback, who's playing, what happens, to miss a 12-team playoff. It's unacceptable at Alabama. And Kalen DeBoer knows that. The staff knows that. All that kind of stuff. I think Jalen Milroe graduating is going to be helpful. I don't think Ty Simpson's more talented than him, but I think Ty Simpson's going to be a game manager. I think he's going to let the running game kind of emerge. They have great weapons, obviously Ryan Williams, and they're going to lean on this defense. I think Ty Simpson's kind of exactly what Kalen DeBoer needs. I think Alabama will be in the playoff. I just don't think they get it done. But this is not going to be a questioning Kalen DeBoer year. This is going to be, okay, Kalen DeBoer is the head coach at Alabama, and that is not going to change for the foreseeable future. And he's going to show it this year. Georgia. Last year was a down year for Georgia, and they won 10-plus games. Won the SEC over Texas. They beat Texas twice. They won the SEC, and then obviously Carson Beck gets injured in the Texas game. They get a bye in the first round, and they lose to Notre Dame in the quarterfinals of the college football playoff. Gunnar Stockton gets a full spring, gets a full summer. They bring in Zachariah Branch. I think this Georgia running attack is going to be so much better than it was last year. For Georgia standards, and for a lot of people's standards, that was not a good rushing attack. And at all. And I think they take a next step with the rushing attack. I think they're still talented defense. It's Kirby Smart. And I think Gunnar Stockton is good enough for this team to be a really complete team in Georgia. And I think their O-line, if their O-line stays healthy and takes the next step, that's probably a lot of people have talked about that being the biggest key for them this year is their O-line staying healthy. I think they do. And I think we get a vintage, not vintage when they won the 2 national championships, but I think we get a better version of Georgia last year. And that version of Georgia last year won the SEC and went to the quarterfinals of the college football playoff. And I think they do that again. So no Texas in the SEC championship. That was a lot. So quickly, before I give you my Heisman pick, and then we're going to give you the teams I have in the playoff. ACC, I have Clemson over Miami. Big 10, I have Penn State over Ohio State. Big 12, Iowa State over Baylor. And the SEC, Georgia over Alabama. Okay. Heisman winner. Cade Klubnik from Clemson. I was debating a handful of guys. I was debating Drew Aller, maybe even Jeremiah Smith, Lenore Sellers, Garrett Nussmeier at LSU. Cade Klubnik is my guy. Or not my guy, but he's the guy I think is going to win in the Heisman. I think Clemson's going to be a top 4 team in college football this year. He's veteran. He's experienced. He knows how to win. He's going to be the Heisman this year. I think there's a handful of guys that can really win it. I think it's probably Sellers. Maybe if DJ Lagway and Florida are better than people think, he could be in this conversation. Throw in Drew Aller. Throw in Jeremiah Smith. Throw in Nussmeier. Maybe Sellers. Those are the guys that I think can win it. But I like Cade Klubnik from Clemson. I think he wins the Heisman. I think Clemson has a tremendous year, and I think he wins the Heisman. Excuse me. If you guys missed any of this, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. As always, follow us on social media at Talking Sports PD. And make sure, as always, we are sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. Use code TSB for 100% deposit match up to $100. College football playoff time It's the fun part of the year. I love the college football playoff. So I'm going to show you who I have in the college football playoff. You guys can see this. These are the teams I have in the college football playoff. No particular order. I'm not doing a bracket prediction because I do an episode every round. I do a first round, I do a quarterfinals, I do a semifinals, and I do finals college football championship preview. So I'm not going to bore you guys to death with predicting stuff, but these are the teams I have in it. So take a quick look. These are the teams I have in it. So the conference winners we talked about already. And the numbers and seeds do not matter. These are just the teams I have. I needed to find a graphic that can get the teams in, and these are the teams this is how I got the teams in. So the numbers and the seeds do not matter at all. But the conference championships we have, you can see my mouse. We have Georgia won the SEC, Penn State won the Big Ten, Clemson won the ACC, and Iowa State won the Big 12. Those 4 teams are in. I think 3 of those teams obviously get a bye. I don't think Iowa State gets a bye. Okay. Sorry for the notification. Other teams that made the playoff from the SEC. So we have Georgia in the conference championship. So they win the conference. They beat Alabama. Alabama gets into the playoff. Texas as well into the playoff. And then the 4th SEC team, in my opinion, that gets in is LSU. So the 4 SEC teams that get in, Georgia's your conference championship. I think conference champion. Texas gets in. Alabama gets in. And then LSU gets in. Okay. Big Ten. Penn State is your conference champion, so they get in. Ohio State is your second team that gets in from the Big Ten, and I mentioned them as a sleeper, and I mentioned them as a sleeper to contend for the college football playoff, and that is the Iowa Hawkeyes, is my Indiana of this year, and that is Iowa. So no Michigan, no USC, no Oregon for the Big Ten. They get 3 teams in. Penn State, your conference champion, Ohio State, and then Iowa. ACC. Clemson is your conference champion. They get a second team in. It's not going to be SMU. I know Georgia Tech is talked about a lot, and I think they're a huge sleeper. I love what they are doing at Louisville with Jeff Brom and Miller Moss. I think they're going to be a potential SMU type of team this year. But I think Carson Beck and Mario Cristobal get it done. And I think Miami is your second team from the ACC. So the ACC gets 2 teams in Clemson and Miami. My one independent team doesn't have to be an independent team. It could be any team, but I do think Notre Dame gets in. Jeremiah Love, Marcus Freeman. This team went to the national championship last year. They're super talented on both sides of the ball. If they get good quarterback play from C.J. Carr, who I think actually has a chance to be a better passer than what Riley Leonard was last year for Notre Dame, Notre Dame gets in. And then my group of 5 team is Boise State as my 12th team. So we're going to run it down. We'll go left. We'll go all 12 teams here. We have Georgia, Ohio State, Miami, and Iowa, Texas, Penn State, Clemson, and Boise State. And then to round out the final 4, Alabama, Notre Dame, LSU, and Iowa State. I want to quickly touch on this. These are some of the teams that missed out that did not get in. Michigan, don't think they get in. Oregon, got in last year, they don't get in this year. Tennessee, got in last year, don't get in this year. You obviously have Ole Miss just missing out again. No USC, no Utah, Oklahoma, Florida State, Auburn, all those teams. So the biggest surprise in my opinion, or to people missing the college football playoff would be Oregon. I don't think it's Tennessee. I don't think it's Ole Miss. I don't think it's Michigan. It would be, in my opinion, Oregon. Oregon not making the college football playoff, in my opinion. Let me know if anybody else stands out to you. They think, oh, why isn't this team? Maybe it's Auburn. Maybe it's Baylor. Maybe they win the Big 12. Maybe it's A&M. You have Louisville, who I talked about. Missouri, who is my sleeper. It's definitely not going to be Virginia Tech, but one guy who is a Virginia Tech fan, that is me, can wish. But who is it? Is it Oregon? Is it Michigan? Is it Tennessee? Who did I surprise you guys by leaving off? And then my college football playoff prediction. I have a fun national championship, and that is going to be Clemson versus Georgia. And I have Clemson beating Georgia in the national championship. So my college football national championship is Clemson versus Georgia, and I have Clemson and Dabo Swinney and the Heisman winner, Cade Klubnik, winning the national championship. So Clemson over Georgia to win the national championship. Whew. Let me know what you guys think. Clemson, Georgia national championship. Alabama's in the college football playoff once again. Oregon misses out, in my opinion. All that fun stuff. Did you like any of my sleepers? Did you like any of my disappointments? All that fun stuff. Please let me know down below in the comment section. Long episode. I talked for a while. I'm a little tired. I'm going to go probably to bed now. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Like I said, if you missed any of our NFL content, please go check it out. Our over-under predictions on the YouTube channel and our NFC preview. And then a week from today, when you guys will be listening to this, will be our AFC preview. And as always, make sure you follow us on social media at Talking Sports PD. Our weekly college football top 10s will be dropping every single Monday, so please do not miss that. Our weekly NFL picks. If you haven't seen any of our NFL top 10 rankings, player rankings, all of that fun stuff is on our social media. A bunch of clips from the podcast, all that kind of stuff is on the social media. So make sure you guys follow us at Talking Sports PD on X and on Instagram. And as always, we are sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. Use code TSP for 100% deposit match up to $100. It would mean a lot if you guys signed up for Underdog Fantasy. Link is in the description. It's the perfect time. I say it all the time, but it is now honestly the perfect time to get on Underdog Fantasy. And we get you guys a little help there. So use the code, click the description, click the link in the description, and they will help you out. Like, comment, and subscribe. Road to 5K continues, guys. I really, really appreciate it. And this won't be our last college football episode for the season. A lot more NFL content, obviously, will be coming your way. We'll do more college football episodes throughout the week, weekly college football graphics and posts on all our social media platform. And then, obviously, come conference championship week, we're breaking down the conference championships. Come playoff time, we're breaking down all the playoff games, every single round. So college football content is not going anywhere. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. This was a little bit of a longer episode, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I gave you my Heisman pick. I gave you my ACC, my Big 10, my Big 12, my SEC championship picks, some sleepers, some disappointments, and my 12-team college football playoff predictions. So please, guys, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Like, comment, and subscribe. Follow us on social media, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.